Hello, Accounting Superstars. This is Professor Don Bush from the Accounting Superstar channel. I've been a professor for about 30 years, CPA for about that long, and I've got great ways to explain accounting. So you've come to the right place to learn accounting, folks. Well, today's lesson is about product costs. Very, very simple, very easy. Product costs have to do with the factory or manufacturing, building a product, providing a service. It's about the people and the materials that are actually being used to build a product. Now we're going to contrast that with period costs, and we'll review that. I made another video about product costs and period costs, and you can find that. In fact, you can find it on my webpage, accountingsuperstars.com. What you do is go to accountingsuperstars.com. I've got all my videos listed by topic. So here we go. We're going to cruise down here. So what are product costs? Here you go. So first of all, we're going to have a really fast review. Really fast. And this is something that I did on a previous video, but I'm doing it again right now just for the repetition. And let me split the screen right here. View split. Okay. So all the costs in a business, every cost in a business, you name whatever it is, it can be classified in two different categories, or one of two different categories. So all costs incurred by business, they can either be product costs or period costs. They are never, ever, 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 ever both. Don't ever think of them in both categories. It doesn't work that way. It's going to be one or the other, all right? Very black or white type of thing here. So product costs have to do with building the product or providing the service, directly providing the service. Now, over here on the right, I've got a guy working here in an office, and he's on a computer, looks like a spreadsheet, or who knows, maybe a video game or something. And he's got some coworkers here. So period costs have everything to do with the administration or the office. Things like the CEO, the administrative assistants, the accountants, the marketing people, just all the people that, usually work in a office setting. Usually they're the people that dress up really, really nice. So here's what's going on here, folks. So product costs, there's three of them, only three. Direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. And we'll get into detail on this in a little bit. Period costs, these are office related. Look at this, advertising expense, sales commission expense, marketing expense, office supplies expense, office computer. Do you see the pattern here? It all has to do with the office. Not about building sailboats, okay? So product costs are about actually building sailboats. Period costs are about the office. So just to save us some time here, I'll just highlight all of these at once. CE travel expense, CEO salary expense, office furniture lease expense, accounting expense, attorney expense, sales training expense. The list goes on. Office property tax. It's all about the office, all about the administration. Vice president salary expense, income tax expense, purchasing agent salary, office utilities expense. Okay, I know I went really, really, really fast there, but I've got another video where I slow it down and explain this stuff. So in a nutshell, all costs of the business either pertain to providing the product or service, in this case, building boats, or the support people like marketing and advertising and accounting and that kind of thing. All right, so we're focusing today on the factory or the manufacturing part of it, building the product. So what are product costs? So direct labor. So what the heck is direct labor? Here's a definition for you. Direct labor, that includes employees building the product or performing services for customers. So if it's a manufacturing organization, these are the employees that are actually building the product. They're actually physically building the product. They're not kind of sort of building. They are building the product, right? If we have construction people, they're the people out there hammering the nails, soldering the pipes together, pouring the concrete, that kind of thing. Or they might be the people performing service for the customers. So like in a dentist office, it'd be the dentist. Now, number two, direct materials. So let's see what the definition is for direct materials. Materials included in the finished product. So in the case of boats, it'd be the fiberglass for the boat hulls, the teak wood, the mast, the mast stays. Mast stays are the wires that come down from a mast. The boat motor, cushions inside the boat cabin. So they are materials included in the finished product. And number two, there's a second part of it here. Materials that are tracked. Usually these are expensive materials or relatively expensive. And management wants them tracked. It's important to track them. So on to the third one. Here we go. Factory overhead, or sometimes people call it manufacturing overhead. And you got to be careful because a lot of things are overhead. For instance, all of the period costs that we looked at, all the office type expenses, they're overhead also. But in this case here, we're looking at manufacturing overhead or factory overhead because we're focusing in on the product costs. So what's the definition of factory overhead? Well, here's a definition that you won't see in your textbook, but it works. It works really, really well. If not direct labor or direct materials, it's factory overhead. In other words, if it's not direct labor, it's not direct materials, it's overhead. All right, it's overhead. And again, we're only talking about the factory or the manufacturing center where we're building the product. We're not talking about the office expenses. Exclude the office expenses. Office expenses are period costs. Okay, so what are some examples of direct labor? So direct labor, these are people that are actually physically building the product or providing the service. So here's one right here. The construction workers building a house. Here's a little picture of them. Here's another one. A dentist in a dentist office. See, the dentist is providing the service to the customer. Or a chef in a restaurant. Here's the picture of a chef. The chef is creating the product. And then finally here, a boat builder. Here's a guy building boats, putting in wooden ribs into the boat. How about direct materials? Here's the first example, copper pipes. So building a house, copper pipes, those are direct materials. They're going to become part of the house, and also they're expensive. Management wants that tracked. I think copper right now, God, it could be $4 a pound or something, which may not sound like a lot, but it's a lot of money. I don't know, it might even be higher than that right now. So copper pipes cost a lot. And how about this? How about building a boat? The teak wood. Here's a picture of teak wood for a boat deck. And then here, restaurant. The main food ingredients. The main food. Now, I'm not talking about salt and pepper and olive oil and stuff like that, but I'm talking about the main ingredients. Like if they're cooking steaks, well, that'd be the steaks. Or potatoes, tracking the main food ingredients, the expensive things. Because that's part of the definition of direct materials. They go into the finished product and they are relatively expensive and management wants to track it. All right. So let's look at factory overhead. Here we go. Factory overhead. Property taxes. There we go. That's a good one. And janitor. Here's a janitor cleaning a floor. And the construction job site supervisor. Maybe for the boat factory, it's the shift supervisor. You see, there's a lot of people that work in the location of where the product is being built, but they're not actually building the boat. So we would consider them part of the overhead. Now, here's a distinction here. Important, manufacturing overhead includes everything regarding the factory or job site that is not, number one, direct labor, or number two, direct materials. We already said that. So what this means is that manufacturing overhead includes things like indirect labor. So what the heck's indirect labor? Well, like the picture of that janitor cleaning, that's a person, considered labor working in the factory, but not actually building the product. So indirect labor is part of overhead. And then the second thing is indirect materials. Now, indirect materials would be things like the salt and pepper for the food ingredients here. Like nobody's going to track exactly how much salt you used to cook these pancakes or whatever they are. And probably no one's going to track exactly how much syrup was used also. So indirect materials, they can be part of the product, but they're not worth tracking. It's just not worth our time or money to track it. Also, indirect materials can be used to make the product. For instance, sandpaper. Sandpaper is a good example. That sandpaper does not become part of the teak deck here of this boat. Somebody's got to sand this wood off so it looks really sharp and there's no splinters and it accepts varnish really well. So somebody's got to sand it, and that sandpaper is important. All right, we need sandpaper, but it's not going to become part of the finished product. And so we call it indirect materials. The sandpaper is called an indirect material. Another good example would be, probably nails at the construction site. It's usually not worth tracking how many sheetrock nails you use to put up a piece of sheetrock. All right, so coming down here, so this is kind of a little bit of a review here, put it all together. So what is indirect labor? Indirect labor, that's they're working at the job site here, so works in the factory or the job site. Number 2, does not build the product or provide services to the customer, kind of like the janitor that works in the factory. The janitor cleans the factory but doesn't actually build the boats or whatever they're doing. Number 3, included as factory overhead, or in other words, manufacturing overhead. Factory overhead, manufacturing overhead, same thing. So in other words, indirect labor is included as factory overhead. So what are indirect materials? They might be included as part of the product, like salt and pepper, that's part of the food product. Or they may be used to help build the product, maybe like the sandpaper example, doesn't become part of the finished product, but it's important. It's a material that's used up. Number 3, not worth tracking carefully. So indirect materials aren't worth the time and effort to track real carefully. And number 4, just like indirect labor, it's included as factory overhead or manufacturing overhead. So in other words, say it all one more time, indirect labor and indirect materials are part of the overhead, the manufacturing overhead. So I hope this lesson helped you out. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know. Check out accountingsuperstars.com. I've got all these videos listed by topic. They're easier to find. You can find what you're looking for. And also hit the like button and the subscribe button. That way YouTube knows that you like these videos, and I know you like these videos, and I'll keep making more. In the comments, if you like, write down, tell me what you want to learn, and I'll try to make a video about it. So until next time, over and out.